Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Look, we are living in the AI era, and honestly, it's so incredibly easy to get completely swept up in the algorithms, the data, all those shiny new systems we use to make decisions. But today, we're going to focus on something fundamentally more important, the human element. We're going to look closely at how the people in your organization literally dictate whether the whole ship sinks or swims when the waters get rough. So think about this. Why do some teams thrive while others just absolutely crumble? Have you ever noticed how a sudden market shift can completely paralyze one department while another seems to instantly rally, adapt, and somehow even find a new competitive edge? It's a fascinating dynamic. And I promise you, it's not just luck. It boils down to a really specific set of organizational capabilities and leadership decisions that determine exactly how a group of individuals processes uncertainty. Because at the end of the day, no matter how advanced our tools become, organizations ultimately succeed or fail through the strength of their teams. You can invest in the absolute most sophisticated tech stack, the best predictive data models, the most streamlined processes on the entire planet. But if the actual human beings operating those systems are paralyzed by the fear of a shifting landscape, none of that expensive technology matters. People are your true engine. A group of adaptable, resilient people is the ultimate strategic advantage in a world defined by constant disruption. Just think about the business environment of the past for a second. Change was occasional. You'd survive a major software rollout or maybe a restructuring, and then things would settle down for a while. You actually had time to breathe, find a rhythm. But our present reality is entirely different. Change is continuous. We're constantly navigating evolving customer expectations, brand new technologies, and rapidly shifting market conditions, literally all at the exact same time. Adaptability isn't just a nice-to-have trait for a few key employees anymore. It has become a core strategic capability that businesses absolutely must develop just to survive the next decade.
Section 1. The anatomy of resilience.
So, if adaptability is the ultimate goal, resilience is the foundation that makes it possible. And resilience, it fundamentally comes down to a mindset. When you look really closely at teams that handle disruption well, they share a very specific set of traits. First off, they have a baseline of deep mutual trust. Because they trust each other, they're able to communicate openly without that constant fear of judgment or office politics. And that open communication naturally fosters an environment where people are genuinely willing to learn new things, even if it means admitting they don't have all the answers right away. Instead of viewing a sudden shift in the market as a threat to their job security, they see it as a puzzle to be solved, a real chance to grow and step up.
Section 2. The empathy gap. Now, we need to address the absolute most common trap leaders fall into when they're guiding a team through uncertainty. It is so incredibly easy to focus solely on the operational checklist. You've got the timeline, the budget, and the metrics perfectly mapped out. But you completely ignore the fact that your team is exhausted, anxious, or maybe just dreading having to learn yet another new piece of enterprise software. When leaders treat organizational change like a purely mechanical process, they breed resentment. The emotional impact of uncertainty is very real, and ignoring it is the absolute fastest way to derail any new initiative. Strong leaders realize a core truth here. People need time to adjust, and they need support. When the path ahead is blurry, human beings naturally look for direction. They want to understand the bigger picture of why a change is happening. Successful change management relies entirely on a leader's ability to show genuine empathy. Empathy is what builds trust. It's what gives employees the breathing room to say, hey, I don't understand how this new tool works, without feeling like they are failing at their job. When you offer support instead of just demanding compliance, you magically transform resistance into cooperation.
Section 3. Building an adaptable culture.
So how do we actually embed this kind of adaptability into the DNA of an organization? How do we make it the default setting for the whole company? Well, you follow a simple but really powerful framework. You have to start by actively encouraging experimentation. But here's the catch. Experimentation is totally impossible if people are terrified of failing. So you must create psychological safety around making mistakes. When a new idea doesn't pan out, it shouldn't be met with a reprimand. It should be met with a curious discussion on what was actually learned. From there, you explicitly reward curiosity and collaboration. When you do these things consistently, continuous improvement isn't something you have to force. It just naturally becomes a living, breathing byproduct of your culture. Now let's look at a highly practical step you can take today. Corporate culture isn't built through massive, sweeping declarations or laminated mission statements. It's built through small, consistent interactions. And one of the most powerful leadership tools available to you right now is simply listening. By creating more opportunities for open dialogue, you immediately start closing that empathy gap we just talked about, building a foundation of real trust. It all starts with a simple, direct question. What is changing in your work? You see, the view from the executive level is almost always very different from the reality on the ground floor. By asking this, you immediately validate their daily experience. You signal that you actually care about the micro disruptions they're dealing with every single day, the little things that slow them down, not just the macro disruptions affecting the quarterly profit margins.
Once you know what's changing, ask them, what challenges are you facing? Often, teams will try to muscle through incredibly inefficient processes just because they don't want to be seen as complainers. Inviting them to share their challenges gives them explicit permission to point out what is broken. It gives you the actionable insights you need as a leader to step in and actually help them do their jobs better.
Next, ask, what support would help you succeed? Notice the highly specific phrasing here. You aren't asking, what do you want? You're asking, what support would help you succeed? This frames the entire conversation around mutual success. It tells the employee that you are squarely in their corner, ready to provide the resources, the training, or even just the time they need to navigate the current shift effectively. And finally, to shift their mindset from fear toward growth, ask, what opportunities do you see? This is where you pivot from merely managing the stress of change to actually leveraging it. The people closest to the work are usually the first to see the new possibilities that a disruption creates. By asking them to identify opportunities, you empower them. You turn them from passive victims of continuous change into active architects of the organization's future. To summarize all of this, teams that don't just survive but actually thrive through change rely on these foundational pillars. Trust directly reduces uncertainty because people feel secure in their roles. Open communication builds the confidence needed to navigate the unknown together. A relentless commitment to learning is what physically drives the adaptability required to survive in shifting markets. And empathetic leadership acts as the glue, holding it all together, preparing the entire workforce for whatever comes next. Organizations that take the time to intentionally develop these interconnected capabilities, those are the ones that will completely dominate the next decade. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to thank you for joining me, and I look forward to exploring how to encourage innovation without creating chaos in our next session. But before we go, I want you to take a hard look at your own approach to guiding a team. The old model of leadership was all about maintaining the status quo and minimizing deviation. But in a world where disruption is literally the only constant, optimizing for stability might actually be the riskiest move you can make. The future belongs entirely to those who can learn, adapt, and grow together. So ask yourself, are you leading for stability or are you leading for adaptability?